Good evening, happy Monday, and welcome in to the #1 Group of Five college football show in the world. This is the Group of Five guys, and our mission is to be the voice for the Group of Five football programs, the voice that the mainstream sports media absolutely refuses to be. We need your help to do that. Need you make sure you hit the follow button on all the social media platforms. Go to YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your best podcasts. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a 5-star rating and a review. Most importantly, tell your family and friends all about us. On this red hot Monday night, we got so much to get to. Eddie George, new coach at Bowling Green. Rumors of Memphis to the Pac-12. We've got to address that. And of course, we talk about the Sun Belt schedule release, biggest games, most important games, things to look out for in 2025. Hope you enjoy the show. This is the Group of Five guys, and we are coming to you live.
I admire how much focus and energy you're putting on this part of college football.
We looked at each other, we was like, Mike, the best place to be is a Group of Five. So I'm sitting here with the Group of Five guys, right?
Troy has won, it's been a winner, and it's a special place, so it's why you want the job.
But it's a ton of fun to watch a guy go to the NFL from a Nevada or a Colorado State or a Middle Tennessee or an App State, and fans follow that kid.
It was across there. You want to have this thing packed out, have the student section packed out, giving those guys hell on the sideline. I mean, that's part of it. I mean,
win or lose, like we're winning the tailgate.
There's no better place to be developed in this country than Boise State.
We got a big time show coming tonight, Jeff. We got to get into it quick.
A lot going on.
Eddie George. Man, I mean, I remember playing NFL Blitz, Steve McNair, Eddie George, Kevin Dyson. I mean, you want to talk about a Titans legend up there in Middle Tennessee area, Jeff.
No question. I mean, I think it's a great hire on its face.
Well, it's a splash. If nothing else, it's going to create some buzz around that program. It's going to generate some excitement from that community, from that alumni base, right? I mean, you got to get money somehow. You got to get people excited somehow. And look, they had a damn good squad last year.
They did.
And so now you kind of went into some momentum. You're going to get Harold Fannin, is going to be a relatively high draft pick. It's going to create a little more buzz. You hire Eddie George.
Well, I think the name, right, it comes with a lot of recognition. You're talking about skill guys, especially running backs, which Bowling Green has had some great running backs in years past. They're going to want to play for Eddie George. I mean, he carries a lot of weight behind that name, and I thought he did a great job at TSU. From what I didn't follow him as close as I do the Group of Five, but just being a local team and Middle obviously played him. I thought they played hard, played competitive, and did a good job there. And from all accounts that I've heard, is everyone loved playing for him. So,
yeah.
And he goes up to Bowling Green. He's going to have more resources. No reason why Bowling Green can't contend.
Well, look, Tennessee State hadn't won the conference since 1999. They won it last year. Kind of a combination Ohio Valley, Big South. They almost had a sort of a merger. Tennessee State won that conference this year. OVC, Big South Coach of the Year, Eddie George this year. So this is not just let's hire a former NFL guy. That seems to be the buzz lately. It's a lot of programs, especially at the FCS level, especially the HBCU realm, which Tennessee State have kind of went that route. You look at Mike Vick. You heard rumors of Shady McCoy getting a head job, but it's the Dion model, right? It's the Coach Prime model. Now nobody's going to be as captivating as he.
I lost you for a second. Sorry about that, guys. We're having some technical difficulties with Sprouse's feed, but yeah, I mean, I think what he was alluding to. See if we can get him back in here. And all types of tech problems tonight. Twitter was down. You back, Sprouse?
I never left.
You got Booted
You
out
got
of the
me?
chat. Yeah, you got booted out of the room for some reason.
Well, what I was saying is all these guys, Coach Prime, Mike Vick just got the job. Now Eddie George, like these guys are not just former NFL players. I mean, these are all-time greats we're talking here. And so, I mean, I'm excited for Bowling Green. I'm some more buzz around Maction, man.
Mac is tearing it up this offseason. And look, we've had some great coaches on so far this year. Our goal is to try and get every single Group of 5 head coach throughout the calendar year on at least once. Seems like we got to get Eddie George on the show next. It's a must, right?
Well, I'd love to get Eddie George on the show. I
Welcome
mean,
to the Group of
I'd
5
love to hear
properly.
about I'd love to hear about how they're gonna revamp the offense into a power I, big running backs like he was. I mean, that's what I'd love to see. But we got to get Eddie George on. I mean, yeah, and look, we've had a bunch on last week. We had Dal Loggins at App State on. Great conversation with him. Talked about him coaching Jay Cutler and Tannehill. Of course, you guys know I love Ryan Tannehill. So I mean, any chance I can get to talk about that is exciting. But we had Matt Drinkle at Central Michigan on. We had Trey Lamb from Tulsa on. We had Chuck Carson at Troy for talking NIL on. Working on a couple more. Strong chance we get Tony Gibson, new Marshall coach, on in the coming days, either this week or next. We're trying our best, working out logistics on that. So a lot of good stuff coming to you. It's off season, but listen, man, it's football year round, 365 as far as I'm concerned. And now, Jeff, I got to get to you. What about the timing though on this Eddie George thing? That's a little not his fault.
No, I mean Loeffler leaves, kind of late. I don't think they've obviously started spring ball yet, so I think he's okay. But he's got to get up and rolling quick. I mean, he's definitely at a disadvantage. Trying to recruit. It's very late. You know what I mean? Its semester's already started, so he's gonna have to make up some ground in this next portal window and go with what they got. That's going to be an interesting situation. Like, how do you just step in mid semester and like, all right, spring ball's next week?
Well, and if it reminds me of Georgia State last year.
Yeah.
And Del McGee had to step in. Now, here's where I think Eddie George, this next transfer window, you're going to get guys that just want to go there. You're not even going to have to see anything, right? They're not even going to have to see the campus. They're not going to have to hear anything. They're just going to want to go play for the guy. And, they'll probably grab some guys. I don't know, what kind of players TSU's got looking to go, but
here's the real question. And, Terry and Stewart goes to Virginia Tech. I think he wishes maybe he would have stayed. I don't know. I mean, maybe he's probably getting cashed out in NIL over at Vatech, but
yeah, maybe.
I'd love to see that kid under the tutelage of Eddie George.
I would too. That freaking lower body strength, that just stout bowling ball running style. Ooh, it's a shame. Yeah. Sometimes grass ain't greener.
So we'll see. But wish Stewart nothing but the best. I hope he balls out at Virginia Tech.
But hey, Jeff, you were in a bit of a Twitter war over the weekend with some of the Memphis faithful. Now tell us all about what you had happening there.
Look, I just posed a question, and I got to be honest here, Sprouse. I owe James Madison fans an apology. JMU fans, from the bottom of my heart, I've been, poking fun at you guys, being a little sensitive, that sort of thing. You guys are very mild compared to some of these Memphis fans. Let me tell you, this is the question I posed on Twitter because they got that big donation to Memphis Athletics. So my question was, and every coach we talk to, every AD, it seems like that the common theme is, where's college football headed? Seems to be this eventual split, right, of college football, of like the top 20 to 25, revenue generating programs are going to break off into their own thing. Seems, we don't know when, but it seems like that's what everybody thinks is going to happen. So my question was, if the college football split happens in 5 years, which the consensus seems to be that's where it's headed, is the cost associated with switching conferences right now, if you're a Memphis or some of these other programs, is it worth it? You're talking entry fees, exit fees, losing some regional rivalries that you may have had over, decades, right? Travel costs, not only just football, but all your sports in general. and then, travel costs for the fans and the parents of these players. If you're Memphis and you're going all the way out, and I get it, like basketball, it's a pretty big upgrade if you go to the Pac Light because we don't know how many teams are going to be in it, right? When they don't have a media deal yet. So my question is, I'm sure their media deal is going to be a little bit more than probably what the American is. But if you're paying, and Memphis is flush with cash, so that maybe it's worth it to them. But that was just literally the question that I was asking. Is it worth it? Is it worth paying that money where in potentially 3 to 5 years, everything's going to get reshuffled around? You're not going to make the jump into whatever they're going to call that new league when they split off. So is it worth it? That was the question I was asking. Or does it make more sense to save that money, invest it in your program, in your facilities, dominate your conference, and then be ready when the shuffle happens? And absolutely just flamed with, you're an idiot. We're leaving the American. We hate the American. Like it was something like I had never seen. I was like, look, dude, I'm just asking the question. I want the opinion from Memphis fans, and they're dead set on leaving, which is fine if that's what you think. But I guess, we're still going to cover the Pac Light probably. So it's like, you're not really, I don't know if it's much of an upgrade, I guess was my point.
Well, Jeff, here's where I'm at with all of this conference realignment. I mean, look, everyone whines and bitches about their conference, right? Only to get promoted. They get the big promotion to the bigger conference. And then 3 to 5 years later, that bigger conference is the same conference they just left. Yeah. They're bitching about the teams that they got to play. Oh, we got to go to this sorry stadium and play this sorry fan base. We got to play in this high school gym. This team's playing they don't even have it on campus. Blah, 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 blah. You look at the early 2000s, okay, right? It's no secret. Grew up a Miami Hurricanes fan. The Big East doesn't even exist anymore. You know who was in the Big East? Miami, Boston College, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, Pitt, a couple others. Sound a little bit like the ACC that they're all trying to get out of now. I mean, you get promoted and they all go together, and then they want to get out of that conference and they're all going to go together. I mean, you look at Conference USA. Not that long ago, Jeff, Conference USA in the early 2000s, Central Florida, Memphis, Tulane, East Carolina, UAB, Conference USA,
yeah,
or the American, or the Big 12 in 5 years. I mean, we just keep going to the next, only to be amongst the same teams we've been trying to get away from for the whole time.
Here's the point that I kept bringing up. Like, sure, if the media deal is that much more, great. I don't really think it's going to be when it's all said and done. But here's the other thing. And I know Memphis just won the regular season conference or whatever this year. Before this year in basketball and football alone, in like the last decade, Memphis has only had one conference title between football, one in football, one in basketball before this basketball season. I hate to break it to you, but it's not like you're dominating the American in either sport. You guys have been close. I thought last year you guys were gonna do it in football anyways. But so like you guys can get mad at me all day long. I have nothing against Memphis. I'm rooting for Memphis. But
Yeah, Jeff, I was letting you take it too. I mean,
it's fine.
I was checking it. My phone was going off, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to let Jeff stand in there and fight this one out solo.
Look, it's all good. I got no problem going back and forth because it was honestly a legitimate question that I was wanting to know from the Memphis fan base. They hate the American. That's the general consensus from at least X.
Well, it's a lot like the Liberty fans have been. They win one conference title. I mean, I know Liberty's a little different. They haven't been in the conference very long, but they win one conference title, and then all of a sudden it's we gotta get out of this garbage conference. Look, hey, Memphis, worry about getting by Navy first before you start talking about USC and Oregon and or whoever you're going to be playing. Whatever. I guess you might as well just be moving to the Mountain West. I mean, that's what the Pac-12 is now.
Yeah.
And a year ago, all the teams in the American would have been talking about the American being so much better than the Mountain West, and now they want to go join them. So, I mean,
see what happens in about 5 years.
That's why I love the Sun Belt, Jeff. The Sun Belt is the conference remaining. The MAC also.
MAC's pretty tight.
The Sun Belt is the conference that has realized the benefit of traditional rivalries, regionality, and not panicking every time every time somebody takes a deep breath and they panic and they got to jump to conference, the Sun Belt was like, oh, Marshall? Oh, yeah, we'll take you. Southern Miss? Oh, yeah, come on. FIU, FAU, you guys go join the American. We'll take Marshall, Southern Miss. We'll take those guys and have this old school, pure college football conference in the Sun Belt. I can't wait to talk about the schedule too, Jeff, because we have our categories. We do these schedule shows. We have, toughest schedule, easiest schedule, anybody with a path to the CFP, biggest conference game, biggest non-conference game. There's so many, and it's so wide open that you really can't narrow it down much. So bear with us on this show. But
this was the hardest one to do by far.
100%. And we got to do the MAC next week. But look, here's what I know about this conference. And I knew this about this conference before the schedule came out. It's so balanced. There's so much parity. You never get to exhale in this conference. Anybody can get beat by anybody on any week. Now, I don't necessarily think it's the quote unquote best conference. I think if you do look at the top of the Mountain West or the American, I think your top 3 or 4 are better in those conferences. But top to bottom, man, there's not a more competitive league in the country. Not a more competitive league in the country than the Sun Belt. Again, I'm not, don't everybody attack me, try to, burn me at the stake. But top to bottom, it is the most competitive. The best team in the American is beating the worst team in the American 100 out of 100 times. The best team in the Sun Belt and the worst team in the Sun Belt, they might split as far as I'm concerned.
No, you're spot on. And I know we'll get to our picks, but one of the ones we always do is the path to the college football playoff. Let me tell you, if any team out of the Sun Belt can have if they're a one-loss team on their overall record, they're going to be the rep. But it could literally be 6 or 7 different teams. But you just get a hot team and go. They're going to have the resume, and they're going to have, if the committee, deems it as valuable as we do, and then you don't get like an undefeated Boise or something.
Well, yeah, that's going to be the key. The problem is, Jeff, it's like we say every year, the winner of this conference is probably going to have 3 or 4 losses. Yep. They just are. I mean, you look at the mess that Georgia Southern and Marshall created at the end of the year last year, and James Madison and Coastal was in the mix late. I mean, yeah, it's just wide open, buddy. But let's get started. Let's get started on toughest draw. And I got a couple. I think for me, when I look at these, and I think this fan base, I mean, we know they're a very rational bunch down in Statesboro, but Georgia Southern, I mean, gee, they got to go to California 2 weeks in a row. We talked about this a few weeks back. Now, maybe they stay out there. I don't know. But they're at USC. Then they're at Fresno State. Then they come back and they get Jack State at home and they get Maine at home. But then they open up conference play at James Madison. And then they come back the next week against Southern Miss, which is basically the team that won the thing last year. I mean, Georgia Southern, they're lucky Jack State ain't going to be the same Jack State, because otherwise, I mean, you might be looking at a 1-4 start, and oh boy, Statesboro will not be happy if that was the case.
No, it's an absolutely brutal start to the year with that West Coast trip. But I mean, that's the thing. We don't know about Jack State. You know what I mean? Like they've hit the portal. They're trying to do things. Like they're not going to be a pushover. So like that's gonna be a good game. But you hit the nail on the head. Once you get past Maine, you get on the road, James Madison, you get Southern Miss, who I think is going to be very, very good this year. We'll see how Georgia State and them go, but then you get on the road at Arkansas State, on the road at App State, and you finish the year at Marshall. That's always a tough place to play. I mean, absolutely brutal draw for Georgia Southern. That was my
brutal
number
draw.
One.
Brutal draw for a team that we've been saying it. Now, what is this? Helton's 4th year now?
Believe so.
Brutal draw for a program that we've been saying this for 3 years, that overachieved in year 1. And when that happened, it just put the expectation at an all-time high in Statesboro. And it's right there again, because last year they were so close, and they kind of dropped the ball at the end with a couple games. And so it's not a good way to start if you want to, you know, cool down anybody's seat,
The
if you will.
if I can give Georgia Southern fans a little bit of refuge, maybe. I mean, you got a new head coach at Fresno, you got a new head coach at Jack State. Obviously, you know, it is a new location for Huff at Southern Miss. Like you got some, you know, Marshall as well. Like you got new coaches at new places and new programs where you're coming in year fourth, a little more continuity. So
Yeah.
I hope that carries something.
When and you mentioned that Georgia State game, which it's rivalry now, and Georgia State's got a tough one too.
No doubt.
They were the next one I had. They're at Ole Miss. They get Memphis and Atlanta. Murray. They'll be should be favored against Murray. They're going to be at Vandy, who Diego Pavia is back, so Vandy's going to be respectable if nothing else. And then same thing for Georgia State. They get to open up the Sun Belt with James Madison as well. They get JMU at home in Atlanta, which, more than likely that's going to be a 50-50 at best crowd for Georgia State. Then they go to Boone, and then they're in Statesboro. So you got another tough one if you're Georgia State. Georgia Southern, Georgia State, both their first half is just oof.
Yeah, it's a tough draw. I mean, my biggest concern with them is health. You open up at Ole Miss, they're going to be good. They're going to be physical. They're probably going to be, I'm guessing, a top 15 team. I mean, got to be. Then Memphis, they're going to be good. They're going to be big. I mean, they're spending like crazy in the portal, have been in the offseason. They got all this money. And then Vanderbilt's going to be another physical game. They're just big, right? It's the thing is you got starting offensive linemen go down or a skill guy go down. The depth just ain't there. So
now I will say, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say if they can make it through that stretch relatively healthy. I mean, it doesn't lighten up, but at least you get in the conference and you can see what happens.
Well, in positive news for Georgia State, they have been pretty good when they play SEC teams from the state of Tennessee.
Very true.
You look at the Panthers, that's a little bit of a silver lining on that schedule. I had one more. How many? Do you have another one?
Those are the two toughest I had.
Yeah, I also threw Troy in there. They do have a week 0 game, but then they're at Clemson. Then they're home versus Memphis. And then they go a long way on the road at Buffalo, who I think is going to be pretty good this year out of the MAC. And then same thing for Troy, man. The Sun Belt is just cranking up conference play immediately. They get a rivalry game versus South Alabama. I mean, buckle up. I mean, we are starting conference play with rivals. Georgia Southern, Georgia State right off the bat. Troy and South right off the rip. I mean,
and then
this is intense.
And then you go on the road, Texas State, on the road in Monroe, Louisiana at home. I mean, it's tough, man. Like there's like, you better be ready to go week 1, at least by week 2, if you're a lot of these Sun Belt teams, because it gets cranked up quick.
Well, and for Troy, like, I mean, you get Clemson too. Like, you're not getting Vandy. You know what I mean? You got Clemson right off the bat too.
And you get Memphis too. I mean, Memphis is going to be big, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, Memphis last year, we said it last year, Memphis it should have been their year. It should have been. I still think that they just didn't play their A game twice.
Yep.
And when they did play it, it was like, oh yeah, this is the group of 5 rep here, and I think they may have missed their shot. Now, we talked about that schedule last week with the American. Memphis has another chance they got the schedule to make a run this year. So we'll see. Easiest draw, Jeff. I got to be honest with you. Anybody that I had in the easiest draw, I could have put in path to the CFP
100%.
and vice versa. So I kept it. I have a few in both, but
I got one in easiest draw, and then I had like 3 in path.
Yeah, so. I'm right there with you. Who'd you have as the easiest draw?
Southern Miss.
Really? Yep. See, I had Louisiana.
See, I think Southern Miss, if you just look at, and again, this is based off of Huff bringing over, they have absolutely crushed the portal. Like, yeah. I was just looking through some of their guys, and of course, it's all going to change again after spring ball, right? But they just look like they have brought in all the top guys they had at Marshall. They brought in dudes from a lot of different places around the country. On paper, they look like they are going to come out ready to roll. And then you open up with Mississippi State at home. That's a great P4 matchup, in my opinion. You got to start off quick, be ready to go. But that fan base is going to be fired up. I mean, I hope they pack that stadium out for Huff's opener. And then you get Jackson State. That's a very winnable game at home. App State at home, right off the rip. I mean, both programs kind of figuring things out. But then you get Louisiana Tech, who's, a mid-tier Conference USA team, or has been anyways. And we talked about Jack State already, new coach, trying to bring new guys. I mean, their conference is tough, but the East opponents they get App State at home, and then they get Georgia Southern on the road, and then they get Monroe, Texas State, and Troy all at home. I just think if they can get rolling in those first 4 weeks, they're going to catch some steam, and they're going to I think they could do some damage.
Shout out to the Bulldogs of Mississippi State for taking this in-state Group of 5 matchup, because the way that they have done in the portal, if there's ever a year for Southern Miss to take down Mississippi State, it is week 1 of this year. I mean, that's it. And I think you're right. And I think, on that, see, I had them in the path to the CFP because I think, how highly I thought of Marshall last year. And I think, like you said, it's kind of, you bringing half the team over. And that Mississippi State game is probably going to be one of the only ones they're not favored in. And they might not. I mean, I don't know. I don't know where Vegas is going to be at with Mississippi State after what happened with them in Toledo last year. But I went with Louisiana because they're at Mizzou. And I'm looking at that schedule. I think that's the only game they're not going to be favored in, at least preseason.
Yeah.
I mean, so Louisiana might find themselves right back in the championship. And the West, Sun Belt's so wide open. You could look at Louisiana, Southern Miss, Texas State, if they can finally put it all together, right? I mean, that's where I'm looking out West right now.
So then who did you have as your easiest?
That's who I had, Louisiana.
Louisiana, okay.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, I mean, I had them in path to the CFP, just because if they can, those two, Rice and McNeese, those are good kind of like tune-up games.
Yeah.
And then, man, if you can, everyone's saying Missouri's going to be good. But if Middle went down there and took them to the brink, I think Louisiana can. You know what I mean?
Well, and again, this is like what we always talk about. This is not a knock saying Missouri is not going to be good or whatever. But when you talk about just the sheer physicality of a program, right? Like, sure, Missouri might have a year or two where they're just good, but they'll never be the big dominant physical team like an Alabama typically would be, or a Georgia would be, or even you could say like an LSU, just their style, right? And they're like that traditional SEC, just big bodied squad. Missouri's not that. Again, not to say they're not good, and not to say that they might not dominate Louisiana. They might, but it's just not the same. So better chance to stay healthy coming out of that game, than some of these other ones that have like Ole Miss and those guys earlier in the year. Jeff, have you ever heard of the Walsh Group? No. Walsh Group, it's a big company out of Chicago. They're the largest bridge building company in the United States. The Walsh Group out of Chicago, Illinois. Today, I am the largest bridge building company in the United States. And that's because I am building a bridge between the Group of 5 guys and the James Madison fan base. The Dukes of James Madison are the Sun Belt's best chance at making the college football playoff in 2025. And I'm going to tell you why, Jeff. They are going to go undefeated in the non-conference, which will include a Power 4 road win at Louisville, ACC contender Louisville, that is. That will also include a road win against Group of 5 Conference USA powerhouse in Lynchburg, Virginia, after a bye week. Keep that in mind. And it will also include a late season home win against former Power 4 member, future Group of 6 member, Washington State. In the conference, they avoid Southern Miss until a possible championship game. They avoid Troy, who I think is going to be a lot better. They get the Ragin' Cajuns, the App State Mountaineers, and Georgia Southern all at home in Harrisonburg. James Madison, you're on my radar, boys and girls, and I got high hopes for the Dukes. They're my best chance at the CFP out of the Sun Belt, Jeff.
I'm with you. That's who I had.
Really?
And all the grief that I've been given their fan base,
Yep.
I think they're going to be really tough. Their schedule sets up nice. Their toughest, matchup in conference on the road is Texas State, which they're trying to replace a lot of pieces from last year. Chesney came in and did a great job in year one. He brought some guys from Holy Cross, and obviously you see, AB3. It's going to be a big question. Is he going to be healthy, ready to go at the start of the season? We'll see. But he's brought in some other quarterbacks. Sluka's in there. I can't think of the other kid's name. I believe he's from Richmond. Who some receivers also came with him. They've been doing well in the portal from all accounts. I mean, look out, the Dukes, man. This might be the year of the Duke.
It might be the year of the Dukes. Yeah, and I'm with you on that. Alonzo Barnett, he's questionable on some things, but I mean, 3 weeks into the year last year, Sluka was looking like the best player in the group of five. And then it came to find out, maybe he wasn't as good as we thought. But I mean, if you get that level of play out of him for a couple of weeks, if Barnett is out, or if Sluka comes in like almost a wildcat type scenario, yeah, dude, James, their defense is going to be good.
Yeah, defense can be solid.
But again, I think the schedule sets up. I mean, Louisville, a pretty good program, but again, they're not gonna be physically overwhelming. They're just not. They might beat them. You know what I mean? I just said they're not going to beat them, but they're not going to be overwhelming. Washington State's certainly not going to be overwhelming.
I think realistically they probably split. I don't know which ones, Louisville and Washington State, but even if they're a one loss, out of that non-conference schedule, the rest of conference sets. I mean, it's tough. The Sun Belt is so difficult.
Yeah.
But just on paper, when you're just looking at schedules, where they got to play, who they got at home, sets up nice.
The unfortunate thing for the Sun Belt is, not that we're national media, but we might be the only people outside of Sun Belt, like specific podcasts and radio, that thinks the way we do. I think the national media, unfortunately, still looks at the Sun Belt like it's the little old Sun Belt. So, even if James Madison beats Louisville or splits the Louisville-Washington State and they slip up to Louisiana or Georgia Southern or one of them, and you're talking 10-2 Sun Belt champ versus 10-2, Mountain West champ, American champ, Nod probably going, especially now. I will say this: I know we had our biggest brands show a few weeks back, and we it's kind of rehashed our so-called dislike for James Madison, which is not true entirely. And you saw what we just did, with the Walsh Group and the bridges that we just built. Do you like that stat, by the way?
That's good.
Largest bridge building company in the United States, the Walsh Group. I do think James Madison has a certain level of national respect just because they've been on game day recently. They have a certain level. James Madison and probably App are the two teams that have a certain level of national respect that the rest of the Sun Belt probably doesn't. Marshall, maybe, but that's the only thing. Like a 10-2 James Madison, much better chance of going to the playoff than a 10-2 Louisiana. From a brand standpoint, that's it. Unfair, sure, but I think it's true. Who else do you have that's got a path to the CFP?
At the Bobcats of Texas State.
Yeah, me too.
So I have, just if when you look at their schedule and non-conference is, I think, challenging enough, especially with Arizona State going as far as they did last year. I got to assume that they're going to be ranked at that point. I haven't looked at their schedule fully. But you get Eastern Michigan. You're on the road at San Antonio, which should be a great game. On the road at Arizona State. And then you get Nichols. Their opponents out of the East are Marshall on the road, which is tough, but again, they're rebuilding that program. You get James Madison at home, which it wouldn't shock me at that point in the season if James Madison could be potentially, 24, 25, somewhere in the ranking, depending on how they do. And then, their West opponents at Southern Miss is tough. Louisiana on the road is tough, but they get Troy and South Alabama at home. I just think if they can, they got to replace a lot, quarterback, receiver, running back. But if anybody can do it, it's GJ Kinney. He's done a great job on the board the last 2 years. If they can get on a roll, if they can beat Arizona State, make a run in conference, no reason why, if they're a 2-loss team or potentially a 1-loss team, if they can do that, they'll be the rep.
Yeah, it was like you're reading off my notes. They're non-conference. Eastern Michigan's a nice group of 5 matchup. Solid club. Game could go either way. I mean, realistically, right? Eastern Michigan's going to be pretty good, but it's a nice matchup. Texas State will probably be favored. They're not going to go blow out UTSA the way that they did this past year, especially in San Antonio. That game, I mean, if money wasn't an issue, I'd love to get to that game again. But now they could beat them. I mean, I think it'll be a great game, but that's a good one. UTSA is going to have some hype, some expectations this year in the American. But if they can win that one again, that game last year versus Arizona State was a freaking banger on that Thursday night. An absolute phenomenal game. And that was still when Arizona State was, looking like the bottom feeder of the Big 12. You're exactly right. Arizona State's going to come into this season with some hype. So big if, but if Texas State can duplicate the performance that they had earlier in the season against UTSA and Arizona State from last year, again, they get them both on the road this year. Look, they're going to go into conference play with a ton of respect nationally. Big if, right? I mean, Arizona State, I think you're right. They can come in ranked. Dillingham is going to be one of the hot names. God forbid Arizona State has some success this year. Stephen A is going to be on there talking about why he should be the next coach of the Cowboys or whoever else. So, I'm with you on Texas State.
Do you have anybody else? That was the last one I really had.
I mean, Southern Miss
Okay.
I had, but we kind of talked about that already. By the way, speaking of Stephen A, you seen this LeBron stuff? LeBron and Stephen A. I mean, pretty funny.
I mean, I think it's pretty soft by LeBron's
oh well, 100%.
part.
Listen, your kid's in the NBA.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
and he's in the NBA because of you, LeBron.
Well, apparently that's what he's all upset about. And look, Stephen A. I think is Stephen A. and Skip Bayless, I think, are the godfathers of destroying sports media. I really do. All this debate, I mean, I can't take a whole lot of it, really.
By the way, not to segue, but I feel like I saw Around the Horn is officially off the air.
Yeah. Now, see, PTI and Around the Horn,
man,
those were good ones. And then they went to this First Take, Speak Your Mind, or whatever. Speak for yourself. Every show now is like some kind of hot. It's literally like called Hot Take or whatever. And that's all they do. They just spit out hot takes about the Lakers, Cowboys.
Yankees.
Just they don't even talk baseball.
Barely.
I mean, hardly. Anyway, what about biggest games? There's so many.
Yeah.
Start with the non-conference. Let's start with the non-conference. To me, the biggest one is one I kind of brought up earlier a little bit. It's James Madison at Liberty. And it's so big for so many reasons, for the whole Sun Belt, Conference USA, right? Conference bragging rights, state of Virginia bragging rights. And look, I mean, if Liberty's going to be the team that Liberty thinks they are, right? This is their biggest game. I mean, this is the game on Liberty's schedule. It's the game for them. So, I mean,
it's huge.
Pressure's on. Big time ball game in Lynchburg. That place is going to be rocking. Two completely opposite fan bases.
They've already been going at it on social
I know.
media. The James Madison fans are mad because I guess they think you can't drink alcohol at the tailgate, and then the Liberty fans are like, "We drink alcohol at the tailgate." They're like, "No, we were told that." It's just I've been watching all this back and forth. It just cracks me up.
I mean, look, I already built the bridge with James Madison, and I just called them that they're going to win that game right now, March 10th, in the year of our Lord 2025. I'm taking James Madison to win that game. But isn't it it's so funny how people have this perception of what Liberty is and isn't, and it's typically wrong. And it's like, well, like we said a year ago, go there.
Just go.
And I bet you're going to have a good time. I
I don't
mean,
know.
I had a
Between
good time.
those two fan bases, I don't know. There's some
Yeah, it
stuff
might
that
be a
goes
good
back
idea to
here.
not allow alcohol with those two with those two getting together.
We
I
might
mean,
have to make that trip.
yeah, well, I'd love to do a live show from the Clubhouse Bar and Grill night before the game. Be a good time.
We'll figure it out. But that's a great one. I had App State at Boise. I think is
Yeah,
going to be
huge.
a great matchup. You're talking about two fantastic brands of college football, both, both replacing pieces. I mean, we talk about Sour Gaines. We think he's going to be really good. But man, you're replacing Ashton Dinty, one of the best running backs ever in college football. That's a big hole to fill. And same with App State. They're filling a lot of holes on offense and defense. You got a new coach coming across the country, but I think it's going to be a great game and a great test for both programs.
Yeah, it'll be such a good atmosphere. I mean, we talk about it all the time. They're the two standards for what Group of Five football is all about. What college football is all about. They are. You know, looking at that one too, because we have got to get to the blue turf.
We've been
Got
saying
to.
it.
I also had App State Charlotte. That game in Charlotte, I think, is going to be really good. Wish this game was on campus, but either way, it'll be a fun time. Tailgate scene ought to be something out of a movie for that one.
Normulance.
I mean, the Normulance, the Black Death tailgate. I mean, everybody, the library deck, everybody's going to be out. I expect that stadium to be, I don't know what they'll get, 40, 50,000 probably.
Yeah.
Which is why I wish it was on campus because it would sell out easily.
Yeah.
But that's all right. What else did you have?
I mean, I had some of the big Group of Five P4 matchups. JMU at Louisville is going to be a monster game for James Madison. Louisiana at Missouri. I mean, and then we kind of talked about it. Texas State at UTSA. I think it's going to be a fantastic game. Not a payback. San Antonio's not happy with the way that game went down last year.
Yeah, I'll tell you another one. So we talked about James Madison and Liberty, but Old Dominion also plays Liberty, and they also play Virginia Tech. We're going to have a little bit of a Virginia, state championship by the time we're done with this season. And Old Dominion, I mean, I don't know anything about what they're going to look like this year, but every year we've been doing this, they play everybody tight no matter what. So
look, I know we hadn't got into let's go to the conference games because I like ODU and I like their schedule this year.
Really? You haven't even talked about them one time yet?
I know, because I was waiting. I was going to insert a new category, dark horse.
Really?
Yeah. But what's your biggest conference games?
I have two. Southern Miss at Louisiana, I think is a potential winner wins the West. And then out of the East, I had Georgia Southern at James Madison. I think's a big one.
Yeah, I had a couple. James Madison at Marshall, I think is a sneaky game. It's always tough to play at Marshall, but it's smack dab in the middle of Texas State and App State matchups. So I could see them looking past Marshall a little bit, and I think that's going to be a tough game. And then I had App State at Southern Miss early in the season. I think it's going to be very telling for both programs. It's right off, I think it's, what did we say? It was like week 3 or something like that. It's early, but I think it's going to be a monster game. And it's going to set the tone for either program that wins that football game.
Okay, well now tell me about your dark horse that you're talking about now.
I love Old Dominion's schedule. I think ODU has been very close the last couple of years. I think they've been missing one piece, and I think they have found their quarterback. I mean, Colton Joseph last year at times looked unstoppable, throwing the ball, running the ball, and then you look at their non-conference. They're on the road at Indiana, right? It's going to be a tough game. Indiana's going to be good. very well could lose that game, but you lose it early, right? And you learn a lot. Then you get North Carolina Central at home. Should be a good game. Should be able to win that one. And then you get Virginia Tech on the road. I think they can win that game. And then you get Liberty right after the James Madison game, which Liberty could be beat up from that James Madison game.
Coming off a bye, too, Old Dominion is.
Coming off a bye, right? And then you get their West opponents this year, Monroe on the road, which, curious to see how Monroe's going to be this year. But then you get Troy at home. Troy's building their program. I think they're going to be better than a year ago, but ODU, man, I'm just telling you. And then JMU, Marshall are on the road. Those are going to be tough matchups for them. But they get App State, Coastal, and Georgia State at home, which I think are all three going to be very winnable games. I just think Kojo is going to be the difference. If he can come out and be ready to go, learn from the mistakes he made last year, the kid is electric running the ball, and he's a very good thrower too. It's a missing piece. He's a missing piece.
You know what I just realized? Liberty, James Madison has a bye the week before they play Liberty, and then Old Dominion, and then the next week they play Old Dominion after they're coming off a bye. Oh, Flames, boy,
they'll be ready.
Yeah, it might be a tough bout. What? All right, that's your dark. I mean, I didn't have a dark horse planned, but I don't know. Somebody in the chat said Arkansas State. I think they're going to be. I mean, they were close last year. That's how this conference is, and earlier in the year, you're going to see you got to look at how these schedules shake out, right? Because early in the year, you're going to see a team with a 2-win lead in the conference, and then all of a sudden, there's going to be this scenario where here's this, team that's 4-5,
yeah,
and has 3 games at the end of the year that they'll be favored in, and mathematically they'll end up with some tie, and then some team you're like, well, I didn't even know they were any good, ends up playing for a conference championship. What do you think about Coastal this year? I mean, their schedule is. I mean,
Virginia's that's a winnable Power 4 matchup.
Yeah, I almost had Coastal in for either the easiest or path to the CFP. I think, they get East Carolina at home. I think that's an interesting game. At South, at Old Dominion.
See, I think that 3-game stretch right there is tough
because I think and then they play South Carolina late.
Yeah, I think ECU is going to be good. And then you're on the road for both of those next 2 matchups.
Well, then late in the year,
last 3 games is brutal.
Yeah, at Georgia Southern, at South Carolina, home versus James Madison to end the year. Oof.
Yeah,
I take that back on the easy. On the easiest, it's one of the tougher ones.
Beck's gonna have his hands full, and I mean, this is a year he needs to make something happen too. I think he's gonna start feeling a little bit of pressure.
Yeah. Marshall's schedule outside, they open at Georgia, which there's nobody in the country that would be favored at Georgia in week 1. So let's not pretend like that's very winnable. Outside of that, though, Missouri State, new Conference USA, remember Eastern Kentucky, at Middle.
I mean, that's a brutal game.
Oh, I mean, going to Johnny Red Floyd, there's going to be at least 5,700 screaming Blue Raider fans down in the beer garden. I mean, but I will say Middle, for whatever reason, when they were conference mates, Middle had Marshall's number like all the time.
Always played him tough.
Yeah, really, really odd. But, outside of that Georgia game, though, they're like, they're non-conference, they'll be favored probably in all of them. Middle, I don't know. We'll see how much Marshall has to rebuild, and we'll see what Middle looks like early. But then in conference, I mean, their whole conference schedule's tough. At Louisiana, Old Dominion, Texas State, at Coastal, James Madison, at Georgia State, at App State, Georgia Southern. Finish the year.
I mean, you just tell me where do you have like a game where you can just take a breath? You can't.
But nobody can.
That's what I'm saying. That's what's so tough about, the Sun Belt is every week somebody can beat you. And, we'll see after spring ball if they bring in some more guys or some people, some guys leave. You just lost so much. I mean, your head coach, coaches, your top players. It's just so much to, in my opinion, replace in one off season and implement your culture. Like we've seen it, but that's gonna be a tall task. But honestly, we'll interview Coach, and then he'll turn us. We'll be like, yeah, Marshall, we're all in.
Bought in, just completely bought in. Yeah. Um, man, South has a tough schedule too. Tulane at Auburn, then Coastal, then they're at North Texas. There's really not. I mean, at least like Marshall's got to play Georgia, Monroe's got to play Bama. I mean, those are a little different,
Yeah.
But other than it's like none of their non-conferences are like so bad where it's impossible, which is why I think teams like James Madison actually have a shot, with Louisville, West or Washington State. But man, the conference is just it's just so balanced.
Yeah, that Tulane at home and then you Auburn on the road, that's going to be a tough 2-game stretch. I think North Texas is going to be pretty good. They're on the road. You got on the road at North Texas, on the road at Troy. You do get Louisiana at home and you get Southern Miss at home, so that's a positive for them. And I think South's going to be a lot better. I think they underachieved it. Like again, they were like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde last year. They'd look really good in one game where they were unstoppable with Lopez, and then the next week you're like, "Where's the team we saw a week ago?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I remember that game where they played App State on a Tuesday night or something like that, and I mean, they just
Bludgeoning.
true bludgeoning in Mobile. But man, is it going to be a freaking hell of a season, Jeff?
What about App?
March
We haven't
10th.
even talked about App.
Well, their non-conference. I mean,
so I think they're another one who have a very there's so many question marks with App. New coach, new players. You're bringing in a lot of transfers. Can you make it all work? But you open up at Charlotte. Like that's going to be it's a big game, but I think it's a winnable game. And you get Lindenwood. Like that should be a win. But then you get on the road at Southern Miss, on the road at Boise State. But if you can get through that, I don't know. Oregon State's a manageable game. They're coming all the way across the country. It's a long travel for them. Then you get into it.
I mean, look.
ODU on the road. James Madison on the road.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, at Old Dominion, home versus Georgia Southern, at James Madison, home versus Marshall. Buddy, I mean, how are you going to come out of that? How are you going to come out of that better than 3-1 at best?
Don't know.
I mean, I don't know where I'm at right now with this, but I think week 4, is that week 4 or week 5? They're going to Boise.
Week 4.
I don't know that App is going to be quite there yet. And I don't have a good feeling about that game for the Mountaineers.
Then you got to come. Well, you got to. Is there a bye in between? No, because then you come right back home, and Oregon State comes to town.
Yeah, I mean Oregon State. I mean they weren't any good last year.
No,
but
still.
Yeah.
What about the Warhawks? We hadn't talked about the Warhawks yet.
Well, except for the fact they gotta play Bama. They always play Bama, don't they?
Feels like it.
It seems like it. Yeah, it seems like they always do. I mean, their schedule is. You look at them from a year ago when they came out the gate firing, and then they kind of slowed down a little bit. It could be a similar type thing. They'll beat St. Francis, right? UTEP might be favored against Arkansas State. Not real sure. So I mean, you could have a 3-1 Monroe team again, but then, Coastal, Troy, Southern Miss, Old Dominion. I mean,
at Texas State and at Louisiana to finish the season that's a tough.
That's brutal.
That's tough.
Brutal.
And they lose Hardy. He goes to Missouri in the portal. They got a couple other guys left as well. They're gonna have to replace some of their top producers from a year ago. That's the tough thing about a lot of these teams is you're losing a lot of your production. Can your coaching staff be able to replace and implement new guys, or just have guys waiting in the wings that are ready to slide in and be good to go?
Yeah, and I meant to find that because somebody tweeted and tagged us in that. We talked about it with Coach Loggins last week about none of the first team all conference players from the Sun Belt were going to be on their same
Yeah, I
roster
need to
this
look that
year.
up.
I meant to find that because it was some, I don't know if that was the exact stat or if it was like, but it's something like that. And so all these rosters are going to be so different. I mean, it's just impossible to pick, and you unfortunately you don't really know the roster. You get sucked into doing what everybody does, and that's looking at the brand recognition, and tradition and history and in the past and what they've done. And you know, the conference is always wide open. It's always wide open.
Like I said at the top of the show, if you can get a 2-loss Sunbelt team that wins the conference, they're gonna have a very good shot to make the playoff. Unless you get like an undefeated Boise, which I don't think they're going to be undefeated this year.
Do you think, okay, let's just play hypothetical here. James Madison, okay? Say they beat Louisville and beat Washington State, but they lose to Liberty and they win the conference undefeated in conference. 10-2 or 11-1, lost to Liberty
They're in.
in Lynchburg.
They're in. 100%
Over.
Well, it depends.
Over,
You got to who's the other
okay,
team?
a two-loss Memphis that lost to Arkansas and lost to, I don't know, Army, Navy. Boise State, 2-loss Boise State, Mountain West champ.
That'd be a hell of a discussion. You get a 2-loss Boise, you get a 2-loss Memphis, and a 1-loss James Madison.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a very likely scenario. See, that's where the brand recognition hurts you.
Right.
If you're James Madison.
But see, and this is my thing. Okay. Now let's flip. Same scenario with James Madison, 11-1, lost to Liberty, conference champion, undefeated in conference. 10-2 Mountain West champion. It's not Boise State, it's Nevada. It's James Madison all day, every day. That's the problem that I have with all of this right there. Because, it's you're looking at brand, and now we're all guilty of it, right? We're sitting here this year. We're already sitting here saying Boise State, yeah, they'll be the favorite. Maybe. But I don't know.
We'll see how spring ball goes. We'll get the reports from everybody.
Spring ball? You mean the flag football season?
No, I mean the transfer portal window, because
you mean the spring transfer window?
That's what I'm basically saying, because you're gonna have people jumping and moving, and I don't know. There's a few programs out there I know that got some money, and they are
spending.
They are spending, from all reports.
We big tax break before they file.
No, they're trying to
at the end of the year. I know.
Unload before July hits and Ripshare gets in there.
I know. Well, look,
got a couple
voicemails.
Hopefully,
do we? Okay, good. I was wondering if Twitter ever got up and running. I don't think
not
so.
Not on this feed.
Well, we got a couple voicemails. Look, hey, you guys, make sure you keep calling those. Next week we'll have the MAC schedule release show. So make sure you call the hotline with some hot takes, 615-900-4286. See what we got, Jeff.
Just get right to it. New caller, first time.
Group of Five guys. This is Mark, a.k.a. Pitt 13-9, checking in from ACC country. Don't hold that against me. I may be Power 4 alumni affiliated, but the Sun Belt holds a special place in my college football fandom. With teams like App State, Coastal Carolina in 2019 and 2020 that stoked my interest in the Group of Five. I've been to Death Valley in Clemson, Neyland Stadium in Tennessee, Notre Dame Stadium in South Bend. And last year I started taking road trips to the Group of Five schools. Got to the Naval Academy to watch the midshipmen run wild over Charlotte. This year I'm working on plans to catch a couple MAC action games, including a Tuesday night game. Definitely, though, on my bucket list the next couple of years are trips to Boone, North Carolina, Conway, South Carolina. Appreciate the work you guys put in for the Group of Five. Season will be here before we know it. God bless the group of five. God bless the group of five guys.
Appreciate you, Mark.
Good call. Yeah, you got a
Gotta get
good
to Boone.
bucket list right there.
Yeah.
Definitely got a good bucket list. Tuesday action. I mean, you if we can only get the locals to go to those games,
I know.
Boone is maybe the only place in the country that'll sell out a Tuesday game. And that's including, I mean, I know they never have them, but I don't even know if I don't know if Michigan sells out a Tuesday night game. Nebraska probably, Virginia Tech, Nebraska, they're probably like the most loyal in the Power Four. I don't think they sell out a Tuesday night game. I don't think they do. Apple do it.
We went on a Thursday against Marshall a few years back.
And it was cracking. Yep.
Big time.
What else we got?
Got a two-part. We called 2 days in a row, but Tom from Charlotte.
Hey, group of five guys. Resident Charlotte fan Tom here, just driving home in wonderful Charlotte, North Carolina on this nice paved road. If you want to let Blake Harrell know about those, I know they don't have them in Greenville. They haven't developed them yet. Anyway, back on topic. Just wanted to give you guys a little update about Charlotte's off season. A little check-in. It's been very, very, very different to the last two. Biff Poggi's absolute madness. We have a ball coach who actually understands the sport and how to run a program. He's just been quietly getting to work, recruiting the local high schools, which is a big, big deal here. I know a lot of high schools feel like Charlotte doesn't reach out in the way they should, so he's immediately been hitting the ground running there. Transfer portal, Biff loved bringing anyone that had a bunch of stars in. It didn't matter if they had zero production at their Power 4 school, they were coming in. Been very different with us in the portal. We've got a lot of Ivy. We've got a Bucknell guy, and we've got a lot of JUCO. It'll be interesting to see if it works. I mean, we're gonna be less talented in terms of pure measurables than last year and then the rest of the conference, but I have so much faith in Tim Alvin that he'll be able to get the ship turned around. It's a brutal schedule, and it's year one of a rebuild, so I'm not placing any sort of expectations on the season. Would love to see us beat some in-state schools, but I have faith in the long run that we're going to get this right, and we're finally going to get this program built the way it should. Another fun update for us is that the press box and tower is supposedly starting in August. That's going to make a huge difference to our stadium, just the look and the feel, the overall revenue it can generate. It's a big deal for our program. I can't wait for it. Anyway, love keeping up with you guys in the off season. But man, I'm already ready for football season. Bring on August. All right. God bless, guys. Hey, group of five guys. Tom here. Follow-up call from yesterday. I had that zinger lined up for Blake Harrell, thinking you had him as a guest, and you actually had the app coach instead of Kenny Loggins, right? So, I was so excited to bring that up, and it's the wrong one. The only thing I got from Mr. Kenny is I hope he visits the finest delicacy in Boone, the two-story Wendy's. And I've heard it's great 6 times a year in Boone. That's all their fans spend there. That's all I got, man. God bless, guys.
Dude, Tom coming out just throwing shade at everybody.
I mean, taking shots. You know what's crazy about that Wendy's I keep hearing about? I've never seen it.
Yeah,
I've had a Boone
like
3-4 times. I've never seen the Wendy's. Somebody's got to let me know where the hell it is. I mean, but yeah, Charlotte, dude, Tim Alvin, I mean, just a culture guy, right? Like that's kind of, and when he's talking about bringing in those Ivy League guys, that's a certain type of kid and that's a certain type of culture that, Tim Alvin wants. I think he's right, man. I think that of all the hires this offseason is one super unexpected. But I mean, I think grand slam home run on that hire with Tim Alvin.
No question. Like you said, it might take a couple of years, but he's a great coach. He knows how to recruit. They do got a brutal schedule this year, though. But man, honestly, if they can come out, it's a rivalry game. I don't care what you say. App's not going to call it a rivalry game, but Charlotte's going to look at it that way. And if they're not ready, Charlotte's going to come out swinging.
Well, if App State don't fix the back end of their defense, I don't matter who they're playing. They're going to give up 3 touchdowns in the first 3 plays. I mean, that's what they did last year.
True.
I mean, I know, look, we had Coach Loggins on, and I'm bought in. I'm a believer in App, but let's not sit here and pretend like App State was very competitive in this conference last year. So, I mean, again, I think they're going to be pretty good. I think they're going to be a lot better. But to open the season, I mean, I don't know. I'm not ready to sit here and say that's a gimme for App State by any means.
No. Especially with the way camp is nowadays. They don't even do 2 practices anymore.
The real question is who's going to win that tailgate? I mean, that is the real question. I know this, Jeff. I'm going to do everything I can to get to, what is that, the Queen City? Is that what they call it?
Yeah, I believe so.
De facto number 1 banking city in the world.
According to Biff. Yeah, that's going to be an electric tailgate. If we get out there, we're gonna have to really put that to the test and see who can tear it down the most.
Yeah. Is that all the voicemails we got?
Appreciate it, Tom. Tom coming in throwing heat today.
Great calls. You know what else he said? I don't know if that was like, he's calling him Kenny Loggins. Who's Kenny Loggins? That's like is that like an actor?
No, I think he's an artist. Kenny Loggins.
What?
Kenny Loggins is a music artist. American songwriter, singer, yeah.
But I don't think that was a shot. I think he was just getting them mixed up. Kenny Loggins.
Either way, it was a great
sounds
call.
like a country star or whatever, doesn't it?
No, Kenny Loggins, that is it's spelled differently, the last name. He's a singer.
I don't know, man.
Take us home.
We gotta go. Hey, look, appreciate you guys watching. Sorry for that it wasn't live on Twitter. Not really sure what's going on with we have to get Elon too busy with Doge. Gotta keep his own platform figured out. But we'll get this thing posted as soon as we can on there. Thank you guys for watching and listening. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Should be right there somewhere. We gotta start doing that, Jeff. Put a thing to click. Should be right there somewhere. Hit that subscribe button. Tell your family and friends all about us. Follow us on all the social platforms at Group of 5 Guys. Have a great week. We will see you next Monday for sure, but probably later in the week with an inside drill. We're out of here.